class of 2013. Why is that? For my 40-hour project, I wrote a book. It's called Into the Dark. Technically, I guess you could call it a short story, because it's kind of short. But you know, if calling your accurate on every beginning makes you feel better about your car. Anyway, in my book, I retold the Greek myth of Orpheus and Eurydice in the year 1941 during World War II. It's a story of a London concert pianist named Oliver, who was called up to fight in the war, forcing him to leave his previous life behind, as well as his newlywed wife, Diana. Much like Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis, it's a Greek myth retold, and it's expanded upon, which is kind of like what mine is, except it's just not as long. I took the characters from the myth and transformed them into characters that would fit into the World War II time period. And then I developed their story around the same time period. The way I tied it into antiquity is pretty self-explanatory. It's a Greek myth retold. I wrote my book around the plot and story of the Greek myth, but at the same time I changed it just a little bit so that it fits into the time period of World War II and the culture of the time. It's kind of like what we did earlier in the year with our biblical, our Bible story that we were told in a modern way. The great thing about this project is that I learned a ton about World War II. My classmates can vouch for me. I kind of talked their ears off about it. But the thing I value most about this project is that even though this is it's kind of thin, I've attempted creative writing like this before in the past, and the brick wall that I always ran into is that I'd kind of stop halfway through. I'd kind of get bored of it. And I've never really finished in any of the big creative writing projects that I've started. This, however, after 97 hours of research and writing, I have finished. And it's amazing what a deadline can do. So I got to work at perseverance in this project. A couple months ago, when we were all deciding what we were going to do for our projects, the first thing our teachers told us to do was to do something relating to our calling. I struggled with this for a little while because I plan on going into law enforcement. There's not a whole lot that you can take and tie into antiquity with law enforcement. So I settled on doing something regarding creative writing, which is something I've always loved to do. After I finished my project, though, I realized that my project actually does relate to my calling. Writing this book has helped me with my writing and descriptive skills, which is something that in law enforcement you use a lot because you're usually filling out paperwork or communicating on paper. So without me knowing it until the very end, God used this project to help me later in my calling, which I think was really cool. I didn't even realize it until the end. The way I related my project to moral philosophy is that in the Greek culture, death was not seen as victory. In the myth that I based my book off of, death is seen as a defeat. But when we look at death through a Christian worldview, however, we see it as victory. Because instead of going to wander the underworld in a shadow of our previous bodies, we get to go with our Lord Jesus Christ up in heaven, brand new and perfect bodies. And so that gives us hope for the future, even after death, which is something that the Greeks didn't have. So before I go, I'm going to read the first page or so of my book. He carefully ran a finger over the smooth walnut wood as if it were the last remaining one on earth. The handlers were never caring, nor were they gentle. Its scars were proofs. Scuffs and scratches covered the body, and the edges were blemished with nicks, consequence of imperfection. It seemed to shrink away at his touch, as if it were ashamed of itself and its marred figure. It smelled rank with smoke and spilled liquor. The dim-lit corner was not its own. It belonged in a grand, acoustic hall, where its voice could be heard and nurtured. Anyone else would have just seen the piano, but Oliver saw it as more. He felt sorry for it and its unappreciated beauty. Yet with one soft touch of a key, he was also proud of it, for it sang as clear and as strikingly as if it were on stage in Queen's Hall. He smiled. The single note hung motionless in the air, instantly removing from his mind the harsh, raucous noise that coincides with all knocking bars. Carefully taking a seat on the piano bench, Oliver was unable to take his eyes off the discolored black and white keys before him. With a slight smile still on his lips, he stared at the contrasting keys, as if waiting for some sign of permission to touch them. It had been over 6 long months since he had last sat on a piano bench. As he sat there, frozen, his mind wandered back to the last performance in the Royal Albert Hall with Virginia Vines, a condescending singer his manager forced him to accompany. She may be a snob, but she needs someone who can keep her in key, Bernard used to say. Oliver chuckled quietly at the recollection, while gazing at the gold-trimmed letters spelling Bentley in the center of the piano, right above the keys. He carefully brought his hand up and played another note, just as crisp and untainted as the last. To that he added his other hand, and his foot found its place on the pedal. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata gradually became the dance his fingers played across the keys. The smooth, rising fall of the ivories brought back in full ecstasy